The narcissist's biggest weakness.
Have you ever felt trapped in the narcissist's twisted funhouse hall of mirrors? Their distorted reflections warp reality, playing diabolical tricks on your mind. One minute, they're a heroic knight in shining armor. The next, a fire-breathing dragon hell-bent on destruction. Just when you think you've escaped, the demented puppet master yanks you back into their house of smoke and mirrors. In this video, I'll shatter those illusions by exposing the narcissist's greatest weaknesses and most pathetic fears. Understanding the darkness lurking beneath their mask is critical to breaking their spell and escaping the funhouse of deceit. I'll reveal over 20 vulnerabilities that reduce these emotional vampires from monsters to mewling, powerless infants. You'll discover how different narcissist breeds like Malignant, vulnerable, and Grandiose narcissists vary in their Achilles heels. And you'll learn exactly how to twist the knife in their wounds to gain power and finally be free. Save this video for when you feel yourself getting sucked back under the narcissist's control or when they start raging. By understanding their weaknesses, you'll know exactly how to avoid falling prey and break their grip for good. Please share your experiences with narcissistic vulnerabilities in the comments. Which patterns ring most true? If their control makes you forget your power, I highly recommend watching a 7-step plan to shock a narcissist to their core. The link is below. Let's explore their weaknesses together so you can arm yourself with ammunition and close this painful chapter. You deserve freedom. Equipped with this top-secret intel, you can rip off the narcissist's mask, exposing the ugly emptiness within. Watch them shrivel from an almighty wizard to a sniveling coward when you ruthlessly exploit their frailties. It's time to escape the narcissist's house of distorted horrors for good. Let's begin our descent into their twisted labyrinth of lies.
Narcissist's fear of abandonment.
The narcissist needs endless worship from their human sheep. Without an adoring entourage applauding their magnificence, their fragile ego will starve to death like a tick detached from a warm body. This makes the narcissist utterly terrified of being abandoned or rejected. The slightest sideways glance can send them into a spiral of rage or depression. For example, one narcissistic girlfriend exploded when her partner tried setting healthy boundaries about her shameless flirting with other men. She flew into a hysterical tantrum, threatening to discard him for someone way hotter who actually treats me like a queen. This emotional blackmail kept her boyfriend walking on eggshells, too insecure to flee her abuse. The narcissist will go to depraved lengths to avoid abandonment. They ensnare victims in a web of deception, gradually isolating them from outside support to facilitate control. As their lies unravel, they desperately scramble to save their food source using threats, gaslighting, pity plays, love bombing, and other manipulation. When all else fails, they embark on a character assassination campaign to destroy the reputation of the target, daring to escape their clutches. But no matter how conniving their tricks, the narcissist cannot bear the agony of watching their broken toy throw off its strings and walk away for good.
Why does the narcissist fear abandonment so deeply? How does this terror manifest in their behavior toward targets?
The narcissist fears abandonment because they require endless external validation to prop up their fragile false self. At signs of potential rejection, they desperately manipulate, attack, and smear the target to regain control over their human food source.
Narcissist's fear of exposure.
Despite their bravado, the narcissist lives in terror of being exposed as a fraud. If their entranced followers saw behind the mask to the pathetic, infantile emptiness within, they would flee in horror and disgust. The admiring gaze that feeds the narcissist's empty soul would turn hostile in an instant. For example, one narcissistic husband exploded in a red-faced tirade when his wife politely suggested marriage counseling. He adamantly refused to let a therapist scrutinize his abusive behavior and risk being outed as a despicable bully in front of his wife. His desperate fear of exposure kept her trapped in the relationship. Narcissists also dread any attention to their hidden vulnerabilities and flaws. One careless misstep could crack their perfect facade. This is why they obsessively groom their public image down to the most minute detail, presenting as the smartest, strongest, most successful versions of themselves. An accidental exposure could destroy this fictional persona on which they depend so completely.
Why does the narcissist fear being exposed? What tactics do they use to prevent their true self from being revealed?
Exposure risks destroying the narcissist's false public image and phony facade of superiority on which they depend for supply. They prevent exposure through deceit, evasion, manipulation, and other tactics to hide flaws.
Narcissist's fear of intimacy.
The narcissist shudders at the idea of true emotional intimacy, which would require vulnerability and honesty. Opening themselves to judgment or rejection is too frightening to consider. Their partner might even discover the manipulated persona they fell in love with is a complete sham. Raw intimacy also conflicts with the perfect, impenetrable self-image, the narcissist project. One peek at the barren emptiness inside would shatter the grandiose mirage forever. As one narcissistic husband explained about his wife after decades of marriage, "I can't show her who I really am. She would be repulsed." Instead, the narcissist opts for cheap imitations of intimacy that demand nothing genuine from them. They conceal their true feelings behind constant projection and blame shifting. They profess love through extravagant gestures, then quickly revert to coldness or contempt. Their cowardice and fear of authentic connection causes immense suffering for those who love them.
Why does real intimacy frighten the narcissist? How do they maintain distance in relationships?
Intimacy frightens the narcissist because being vulnerable conflicts with their superior facade. They avoid it through dishonesty, secrecy, emotional distance, and pursuing shallow, one-sided bonds that demand nothing from them.
Narcissists' fear of rejection.
To the narcissist, any criticism, disagreement, or disapproval feels like catastrophic rejection. Their paper-thin skin and fragile ego bruise at the slightest critique. Since they childishly believe they should be universally adored for their obvious perfection, they lash out in rage when this entitlement is denied. For example, when a narcissistic manager's proposal was politely questioned in a meeting, he threw a toddler-level tantrum. He lambasted his team as incompetent fools to shut down debate and reassert his authority through intimidation. Ironically, the same narcissists who claim perfection also crave validation of their carefully crafted persona. They expect applause while aggressively quashing any negative feedback that contradicts their flawless image. This is why they surround themselves with blindly obedient yes-men and venomously turn on dissenters.
Why does the narcissist fear and react so intensely to rejection? How do they coerce respect when criticized?
The narcissist fears rejection because their worth depends on external validation. At criticism, they attack the source, silence them through fear, and manipulate new admirers, refusing to adjust their delusions.
Fear of the narcissist.
Despite projecting a big game, deep down the narcissist is consumed by fear of exposure, abandonment, criticism, inferiority, and 100 other threats, real and imagined. They are masters of projection. While assessing others with hypervigilance, the narcissist fails to recognize that they themselves are ruled by terror. This fear drives their abusive behavior. Since they constantly feel in danger of being dominated, the narcissist relentlessly fights to establish control over others instead. But understanding what spooks them gives insight into their madness and power to change the narrative. Their projection of strength loses all power when we recognize the narcissist as a tremulous, frightened child lashing out in fear of their own vulnerabilities.
What does the narcissist actually fear most? How can targets use this knowledge as leverage?
The narcissist fears having their false mask and sense of control stripped away, exposing their weakness. Recognizing their fear helps disempower their projection of strength.
Is the narcissist secretly scared of me?
Despite their haughty sneering, the narcissist does harbor an unspoken fear of their victims gaining power. On some level, they know they rely on others to prop up their fragile ego. This dependence gives targets more leverage than the narcissist wants them to realize. They especially fear victims who see through their manipulations, stand up to their bullying, and work to expose the truth about them. The narcissist's ability to keep targets controlled is threatened when they stop complying with the abuser's twisted narrative. Holding firm in the face of the narcissist's outraged attacks ultimately causes them to back down in cowardice.
Does the narcissist secretly fear their victims? What signs reveal the narcissist feels intimidated?
On some level, yes, the narcissist fears strong targets who won't be brainwashed. Signs of secret intimidation include rage, withdrawal, suddenly being extra nice, or trying to assassinate the victim's credibility through smears.
Narcissists' fear of death.
Though they delusionally deny weakness, the narcissist is deeply unsettled by death. Their paltry existence revolves around securing endless validation to maintain their puffed-up sense of superiority and feel real. Confronting the annihilation of their false self is existentially terrifying. If they are not immortal gods, then what are they? What is the point, the meaning of their lives? This fear drives narcissists to pathetically grasp at shallow symbols of immortality, like attention-seeking, having offspring to project onto, chasing prominence, and legacy building. but no amount of frantic ego inflation and pursuit of validation can ever truly conquer their terror of ceasing to exist.
Why do narcissists fear death? How does this unease manifest in their behavior?
Death threatens the narcissist's delusions of superiority and ego survival after physical death. This provokes profound anxiety, which manifests through denial, pursuit of shallow immortality symbols, legacy obsession, etc.
Narcissists' fear of being alone.
The narcissist depends on exploiting others to self-regulate emotions, self-soothe anxiety, and obtain the validation essential to their false self. Too much time alone means confronting the barren void within rather than escaping through constant manipulation and attention-seeking. For example, one narcissistic husband immediately scoured dating apps for new targets whenever his wife left town for work. His ravenous hunger for endless worship could not tolerate the slightest pause in supply. Similarly, many narcissists compulsively hoover when former targets cut contact because the loss of control over another is too terrifying to endure.
Why does isolation unsettle the narcissist? What behaviors stem from their solitude aversion?
Being alone forces the narcissist to confront their damaged true self. They cope through constantly seeking validation via relationships, social media, fame pursuits, and other external attention hooks to avoid this emptiness.
Core narcissistic weaknesses.
Despite their bravado, the narcissist actually harbors countless flaws and insecurities disguised by a false veneer of confidence. Their haughty projecting covers for proneness to envy, raging insecurity, a hair-triggered temper when criticized, and an addictive neediness for validation. Other weaknesses include inability to handle boundaries, lack of self-awareness, arrogance, capacity for deception and manipulation, and an emotional range limited to smug superiority, alternating with infantile rage when thwarted. Essentially, the narcissist wields a flimsy facade of strength to conceal a tremendous fear of the glaring deficiencies and weaknesses lurking within. Their exaggerated swagger exists only to mask and overcompensate for a pitifully fragile sense of self.
What are some core weaknesses and insecurities common amongst narcissists? What purpose does their facade of confidence serve?
Common narcissistic weaknesses include neediness, entitlement, envy, arrogance, deception, and inability to handle criticism or boundaries. Their overconfidence conceals deep flaws and compensates for profoundly low self-esteem.
The narcissist's biggest weakness.
Among their endless defects, the narcissist's fatal flaw is inner emptiness. Their true self is a black hole, dead space where humanity should exist. With no empathy, values, self-knowledge, or principles to guide them, they lurch through life like a ravenous animal obsessed only with survival and securing their next hit of supply. This spiritual hollowness corrodes their soul. All their arrogant boasting and bullying cannot fill the desolate void within. This is why they so desperately crave attention to construct a feeling of substance. Deep down, they know the ugly truth. They are the wizard behind the curtain, a grasping shell of a person frantically projecting an illusion of greatness.
What is the narcissist's core weakness and biggest insecurity? How does this inner lack drive their behavior?
The narcissist's biggest flaw is a hollow inner void where identity and humanity should be. This emptiness fuels their endless yet futile quest for validation and false self-construction.
Vulnerable narcissist weaknesses.
The vulnerable or covert narcissist publicly projects a facade of inadequacy and victimhood designed to garner sympathy and dodge responsibility. But beneath this humble guise, they harbor the same grandiose sense of superiority and entitlement as any narcissist. Their weaknesses include hypersensitivity to criticism, paranoia about social rejection, fragile inability to handle stress, and a manipulative victim mentality. However, unlike overt narcissists, vulnerable types lack the boldness or clout for open domination. They instead manipulate indirectly through guilt, shame, and martyr acts. What distinct weaknesses plague the vulnerable narcissist? How do they differ from the bolder overt type? Vulnerable narcissists are hypersensitive, paranoid, play the victim manipulatively, and live through others' success. Unlike overt types, they cower under a facade of weakness versus projected strength.
Malignant narcissist weaknesses.
The malignant narcissist is defined primarily by a pronounced lack of empathy and extreme aggression that arise from profound inner insecurity and fragility. They gain sadistic satisfaction from provoking harm and chaos. Other weaknesses include inability to form meaningful emotional bonds, hair-trigger vindictiveness when perceiving slights, pathological enjoyment of crushing their victims emotionally, and an obsession with establishing control over others by any means necessary. Their humanity is replaced almost entirely by predatory malevolence. What notable weaknesses and fears typify the malignant narcissist? How do they differ from other types? The malignant narcissist is characterized chiefly by lack of empathy plus tendencies toward aggression, sadism, vengefulness, and an obsession with power and control. They are the most intentionally abusive type. Grandiose narcissist weaknesses. Grandiose or overt narcissists loudly advertise a false facade of superiority, brilliance, and entitlement. But behind this ostentatious display lurk profound feelings of inadequacy, fragility around criticism, extreme defensiveness, and a neediness for constant validation. Other weaknesses include inability to respect boundaries, arrogance, inclination toward heartless manipulation, and lack of self-awareness or empathy. Their boastful, domineering exterior overcompensates for an uncertain inner self that requires endless buttressing. What weaknesses belie the grandiose narcissist's cocky exterior? What purpose does their bragging and dominance serve? The grandiose narcissist is secretly insecure and hangs by a thread when criticized. Their haughtiness and arrogance disguises deep inadequacies, requiring continual validation.
How to exploit the narcissist's weak spots.
Recognizing the narcissist's frailties is power. Their projected strength is a thin veneer covering abundant fears and defects. Apply pressure skillfully at weak points to gain the upper hand when confronting their tactics. Expose their false image. When they criticize you, calmly point out the jealousy, insecurity, or manipulation driving them. Speak your truth to contradict their lies. Their facade depends on keeping flaws hidden. Enforce strict boundaries. Set clear expectations for acceptable behavior and consistently apply consequences when crossed. Refusing to cater to their sense of entitlement exposes their inability to respect limits. Call out past mistreatment. When they hoover after devaluing you, name their weaknesses and abuse. Highlight patterns proving they cannot meet your needs. Stay resolute despite their charming attempts to rewrite history. Leveraging the narcissist's vulnerabilities allows you to strip away their mask and reveal the petulant, trembling child within. Cut ties for good once their tools of control lose all power over you. The narcissist projects an illusion of omnipotence. But beneath the bravado lurk endless fears, voids, and weaknesses. Their facade of strength belies a fragile house of cards at risk of collapse from the slightest breeze. Mastering the narcissist's weaknesses is key to disempowering their manipulation tactics and escaping their funhouse of distorted crazy-making. Once you expose the sniveling coward pulling the strings, their house of mirrors loses all power over you. You can finally break free and leave their pathetic charade behind in pieces. The narcissist's projected strength is only an elaborate disguise. Use their vulnerabilities against them and let their weakness set you free. The power rests with those who recognize that behind the boasting cinderblock wall resides a powerless, crying child. It's time to get real and escape the Hall of Mirrors for good. I hope you found support and validation in the shared experiences here. Please comment with your story to help others heal. If you still struggle with no contact, don't hesitate to reach out for coaching. I want to continue this conversation to bring narcissistic abuse out of the shadows. Your financial contributions through donations or patronage make that possible by allowing me to create empowering resources to spread awareness and keep survivors' stories heard. Don't forget to subscribe and press thanks if these videos have eased your isolation and pain. Your generosity allows me to be here together. We can help victims rediscover their wings after narcissistic abuse clipped them for too long. I believe in this community's resilience.